Hello and welcome to Anandol. Hello and welcome to Anandol. In today's class, we will continue with the agricultural pricing policy in India. The previous class, I explained to you what is the reason for the intervention of government in our country in order to fix the agricultural prices. So it is to protect the interest of both the consumers as well as the farmers. If the price becomes too low, the farmers will not be benefited. They will not get the remunerative prices. They will not get that income. And if the price becomes too high, then the consumer will suffer, the common man will suffer. So in order to benefit both the farmers as well as the consumers, the government is interfering. Okay. And we have seen that what are all the some of the points in main features of agricultural pricing policy in India. So the main features of agricultural pricing policy in our country. So the other day, I explained to you the government established two institutions. One is the Agriculture Price Commission, which is now named as the Commission for Agricultural Cost and Prices. So that is one institution. And the another one is the CACP, and another one is the Food Corporation of India. So the Food Corporation of India is responsible for purchasing the produce from the farmers. And the next one, apart from that, the government, the fixation of minimum support price. So the Food Corporation of India, on the advice of the CACP, fixes the minimum support price when the Food Corporation of India is purchasing the produce from the farmers after the harvesting season. And then the next one is the maximum price fixation. So the maximum price fixation is when the Food Corporation of India selling the produce through the ration shops. So what should be the maximum price that has to be paid by the consumer? So that is the maximum price fixation. So these three we have already finished in the previous class. And the next one is the procurement prices. Okay, so there are two different things. One is the procurement price and another one is the minimum support price. So the procurement price is nothing but, again, the price at which the government, so the government, when I say government, through Food Corporation of India. So Food Corporation of India is the main agency or the only agency which is purchasing the produce from the farmers to be sold at the to the consumers. So when the FCI purchases or procures food grains from the farmers. So when after purchasing the produce from the farmers, there are two things that are done by the Food Corporation of India. One is to distribute to the consumers through the PDS. So the PDS is nothing but the ration shops. So that the maximum, what should be the price that has to be paid by the consumer when they are purchasing from the ration shop. We all know that the prices of the commodities, if it is sold through the ration shops, it is lesser than the prices which is prevailing in the open market, isn't it? So that the consumers will not suffer. So this distribution of the produce to the consumer through PDS. That is one thing. And another thing is to maintain buffer stock. These are the two things that are done by the Food Corporation of India. Okay. Now, what is this buffer stock? So the buffer stock is nothing but the Food Corporation of India maintains, after the harvest is over, normally the farmers are having a huge quantity, huge supply is there immediately after the harvest. That's the time most of the farmers, they sell their produce. So at that time, since we have already seen that they are not having the proper storage facilities. So the Food Corporation of India purchases the commodities from the farmers and sells part of the produce. They are selling it through the ration shops. The remaining part, they are storing it. So when and that storage part of the commodities, that is known as the buffer stock. And whenever there is a shortage of food grains, at that time, from the buffer stock, the FCI releases the commodities. So if it is done accordingly, then there will be price stability in the of food grains in the country. So the farmers will also get the remunerative prices, and the consumers will also, the price will not increase at the time of shortage, and the consumers will also be benefited. So that is the buffer stock. So put it in words. So the FCI procures the food grains, and basically the FCI stores, keeping it in the form of stock. So FCI stores them to be released at the time of shortage. So the main advantage of this operation of the Food Corporation of India is, so this is to ensure there will not be any price fluctuations. So this is done to ensure price stability. So the Food Corporation of India need not have to sell the entire commodities after the entire stock of the commodity it is purchasing from the farmers as soon as the harvest is over. At that time, the price will be very less. The FCI will not distribute the entire commodities, so that the price will be reasonably high enough and the farmers will be benefited because of that. And whenever there is a shortage, the FCI releases from the buffer stock so that the price will not go too high, and again the price will maintain that equilibrium level. So through that way, the consumers will also be benefited. So this is these are all the two operations mainly done by the FCA. Okay. Now I mentioned to you that both the minimum support price as well as the procurement price. Minimum support price also I mentioned, whatever the price that is paid by the FCI to the farmers when it is purchasing the produce from the farmers, that should be reasonably supporting enough to the farmers and his family. And I mentioned the same thing for the procurement price also. So the procurement price also I mentioned, whatever the price that the FCA is paying to the farmers when it is procures or purchasing the produce from the farmers. Now, what is the difference between the MSP and procurement price? I mentioned the same thing for both, but there are certain differences between the MSP and, for your understanding, the differences between both are not exactly the same. Differences between MSP and procurement price. There's a very minor difference between the two. See, the MSP and this is the procurement price. Okay. See, the MSP is announced by the government. So MSP is announced by the government before sowing season. So before the farmer is sowing the crop, the government announces these are all the crops for this season we are going to purchase. So accordingly, whatever the produce, whatever the crops the government is announcing, accordingly, the farmers will start cultivating that kind of crop. So that is MSP. Okay. But the procurement price is announced by the government after the harvest is over. So is announced after harvest. Okay. So MSP is announced before sowing season and the procurement price is announced after the harvest. And another thing is the MSP is generally it is for all, most of the commodities, for all agricultural goods. Supposed to be. MSP is supposed to be whatever the crops which are regularly the farmers will keep sowing. So for all those commodities, the MSP will be announced by the government. So MSP is basically for all goods, but whereas, so you can highlight this also. MSP is for all goods, but whereas the procurement price is only for essential goods. See, normally what happens, the FCI announces the minimum support price before the sowing season. But unfortunately, because of erratic climatic conditions, if the farmers are not able to cultivate that crop, or sometimes because of the erratic climatic conditions, there is not sufficient produce from the farmers are not cultivating that much amount of produce. So because of the shortage, because of the unfavorable climatic conditions, there might be a shortage of food grains. So during that point of time, what the farmers will do, see, the farmers are free to sell either to the Food Corporation of India, or they can also sell directly to the open through the open market if they are having the sufficient means, sufficient facilities. The big farmers and all, normally they sell directly to the open market. But the thing is, suppose if there is a shortage of food grains because of the unfavorable climatic conditions, the farmers, what they will do, at that time the price will increase, isn't it? Because of the shortage of food grains, the price in the market will increase, the price in the open market will increase. So the farmers want to take the advantage of increase in prices. They might not be willing to sell directly to the Food Corporation of India. Instead, they prefer to sell the produce in the open market. So at that point of time, what happens? The consumers will face the shortage of commodities, isn't it? So the consumer will face the hardship. So in order to avoid that, so by the MSP is announced even before sowing, but after the sowing season, if anything happens, then if there is a shortage of food grains, the price in the open market will increase. So the farmers will be preferring to sell directly to the open market, and the consumers will face the hardship, isn't it? So in order to avoid that, in order to encourage the farmers to sell to the Food Corporation of India instead of open market, the government announces the procurement. That is the procurement price the government is announcing, so that the farmers will be encouraged to sell to the Food Corporation of India instead of the open market. And the price of the procurement prices, normally it is lesser than the open market price, of course, but it is definitely more than the minimum support price. So that the farmers will be assured of that price. So one thing in the market is the farmers cannot be assured of the sales, isn't it? So they might be able to sell it in the open market, or they might not be able to sell through the open market. There is a certain amount of uncertainty over there. But if the farmers are willing to sell to the Food Corporation of India, they are assured of that income. The Food Corporation of India will purchase whether the demand is there or not. The FCI purchases the produce from the farmers, and they will pay that whatever the price assured by the FCI. Either it is the MSP or the procurement price. Understood now? So that's why the procurement price is only for the essential goods. If there is a shortage, in order to discourage the farmers to sell to the open market, or in order to encourage the farmers to sell to the Food Corporation of India, the FCI announces the procurement price, which is higher than the minimum support price, but it will be lesser than the open market price, because the FCI aims to benefit even the consumers. Okay, so that is the difference between the minimum support price and the procurement price. Okay, so these are all the basic features of agricultural pricing policy in our country. But it is also not without any defects. So there are several shortcomings of the agricultural pricing policy of the country. So the shortcomings of agricultural pricing policy. And let us side by side check, in order to overcome that shortcomings, what are all the suggestions to rectify those shortcomings. Okay. So the first shortcoming is the minimum support price is lesser than the market price. So in that way, the farmers are deprived of the better remunerative prices. And it is also, most of the time, it is whatever the minimum support price announced by the government, it happens to be less remunerative to the farmers. Less remunerative to farmers. So that is one of the major criticisms against the MSP announced by the government. So what should be the solution for this? So the solution for this is the government should provide remunerative prices. So the government should increase the minimum support price so that the farmers will be benefited. So MSP should be increased and it should be reasonably remunerative to farmers to support. Actually, the main idea is it should be able to maintain the farmer subsistence level of living to the farmer and his family, isn't it? So it should be reasonably remunerative to the farmers. So in this regard, the National Commission on Farmers. So the National Farmers Commission, it suggested a uniform price of, the price, the MSP should be cost plus 50% margin as MSP. So they suggested it should be the uniform, there should be uniform MSP of cost plus 50% margin. That should be fixed as the minimum support price. Okay. And the another defect of the shortcoming of the MSP, it is less remunerative. And another defect is, the second defect is, it is also criticized that MSP is not universal. So MSP is not universal. So in order to avoid that only, the National Commission on Farmers suggested that it should be universally cost plus 50% margin should be fixed as the minimum support price. Okay. The third criticism of MSP is MSP does not cover all commodities. So does not cover all commodities. Okay. So the suggestion for this is, it is all the necessary commodities, all the necessary commodities should be covered under minimum support price. So in order to do that, what the government has to do is the government has to establish more agencies. So that is can be done by establishment of more agencies. See, now we are having only the Food Corporation of India, which is responsible for procuring the produce from the farmers and maintaining the buffer stock and selling through the PDS and to the ration shops. So apart from Food Corporation of India, the suggestion is, so on establishment of more agencies, like for example, apart from FCI. So there should be Cotton Corporation, Jute Corporation, Corporation for Perishable Commodities. So like that, if more and more agencies are established, then more and more commodities will be covered under MSP. Okay, so that is the suggestion for the shortcoming. MSP does not cover all commodities. Okay, then the next criticism is against the shortcomings is against the way in which the public distribution system is operating in our country. So again, shortcomings and suggestions. So the next is against the public distribution system. So one thing is public distribution system is not universal. Okay, and so universal in the sense, again, I mean, universally, that is, unanimously, it should be implemented for all the commodities and everybody should be covered. I mean, the targeted audience, mainly the below poverty line people, they should be covered under the public distribution system. So let us first check out what are all the shortcomings. It is the PDS system is not universal and it has got so many flaws. So it has so many defects or flaws in the way the public distribution system is operating in our country. Like, for example, like no sufficient quantity. See, when a family is having the ration card, and when they want to purchase the required amount of quantity that is mentioned in the card, they should be able to purchase it from the ration shops, isn't it? But most of the time, the required amount of quantity is not available in the particular majority of the ration shops in the country. So there is no sufficient stock, there is no sufficient quantity in the ration shops, and it is also not strictly enforced. So not strictly enforced in the sense that actually it is meant mainly for the below poverty line people. But in our country, that objective is not strictly enforced. Even the people above poverty line also, they will get the ration card by hook or crook, and they will also be able to purchase the commodity at a lesser price from the ration shops. That is one of the reasons not sufficient quantities available for the people who really need it, for the below poverty line people. So that is the defect or the criticism against the public distribution system that is operating in our country. Now, for that, the suggestion is there should be universal PDS. So this is the suggestion. So one is should be implemented universally with should be implemented universally and with more efficiency and transparency, so that all these criticisms will not be there. All these mistakes will not happen. Not sufficient quantity, that above poverty line people are also able to purchase. So all those criticism will not be. In order to avoid all that, more efficient, it should be managed more efficiently. It should be managed and it should operate with utmost transparency. Okay, so that is the another suggestion for major shortcoming for agricultural pricing policy in our country, and there should the solution for that. Okay, and apart from that, the next criticism is against the procurement price. So basically, what is I mentioned to you, the procurement price is something the Food Corporation of India purchase only at the time of shortage of food grains. Whenever there is a shortage of food grains, in order to benefit the consumers, they need the price goes up. In order to benefit the consumers out of that, the Food Corporation of India purchases and sells it at a lesser price to the consumers. So the main idea of this procurement price is to benefit the consumers so that the price of the essential commodities will not increase in the market. But that objective of that is objective of procurement price, but it is not actually meeting that objective. So most of the time the government is announcing only the minimum support price instead of the procurement price. Only under very, very extreme conditions, the procurement price is announced by the government. Even though the Food Corporation of India procures the commodities from the farmers, only under extreme conditions, the government is announcing the procurement price. And most of them, it is announcing only the minimum support price. Okay. So that is another criticism. So procurement price, basically, procurement price does not actually check the abnormal increase in prices of agricultural goods. So the main idea of procurement prices, if there is an abnormal increase because of shortage, the consumers will suffer. So in order to check that, the procurement price, the Food Corporation of India has to purchase the commodities from the farmers so that the price will be lesser than the open market price. But that is not been happening in the country. Okay. So increase in prices of agricultural goods. So most of the time, what is happening? It is used only whenever there is extreme weather conditions. Meaning, of course, only extreme weather condition, the price will vary abnormally, no doubt about it. But even otherwise also, like drought and all, even otherwise also, the agricultural prices, it's not stable, isn't it? So because of the frequent rise in the general price level in the country because of the inflation, the first reason for inflation in the country is rise in the food grains, because the food grains, that category has the major weightage when we are calculating the general price level. So the main reason for rise in general price level is because of the rise in the prices of food grains. So even without any abnormal conditions in the country, abnormal weather conditions in the country, the prices of food grains continuously keep on increasing. So even during that period of time also, the Food Corporation of India should announce the procurement price. But that is not being happening in our country. Only very, very extreme conditions like, say, okay, this period it is because of the severe drought in the country. Only during that period of time, the FCA is announcing the food procurement price. Otherwise, it is announcing only the minimum support price. Okay, so that should not be the case. Okay, in order, there should be a stability in the food grains. Even though the continuously the prices are increasing in the country also, the procurement price is not actually checking the rise in prices. So so all those mistakes have to be rectified by the government. Okay, so these are all the shortcomings and suggestions for agricultural price policy, and both these shortcomings and suggestions, they both are important for your 5 marks questions from the board exam point of view. Okay, so this is about the agricultural pricing policy in our country. Okay, so if you find this video useful, please like, share, and please subscribe so that you will not miss any topics. So there is only one more topic left in the agricultural sector, that chapter. The next topic is food security, which I will explain to you in my next class. Okay, so until my next class, take care. Bye-bye.